Hey, Imago kids! Welcome back. It's time for another Bible story. It's me, Pastor Kyle, and I got a couple things to start off here. First one is, have you done your acts of kindness? Any more acts of kindness? Come on! You got to do a couple more, those of you guys that said no. And good job for those of you that said yes. Keep shooting me your stories. I'm going to share a couple of them here coming up, and I'd love to hear those. Got a couple birthdays. So today is the 23rd. So right now, today, when this video comes out, it's Mercy's birthday. So happy birthday, Mercy. I hope you have an awesome birthday. And then tomorrow is Hudson's birthday. So happy birthday, Hudson. I hope that you have a fantastic time. And I hope you get an awesome gift or something. And then Camber's birthday is in 2 days. Not tomorrow, but the next day. So Camber, happy birthday. I hope you have an awesome time with your family. Maybe you guys can play a special game, do something cool. But that'd be awesome. So we've asked about 100 acts of kindness, and we celebrated our couple birthdays. Again, crafts and our 100 acts of kindness are right down in the description below. Make sure to do your activities after this story and even after our science experiments right down there for you guys to get them. Make sure that subscribe button is hit so you can always be getting our new stories when they come out. But today we're going to talk about the 10 Commandments. Have you guys heard of those? Yeah? So it's also, it's 10 different words of instruction that God gave people of Israel for them to learn to walk in. But we last finished our story with Abraham and learning to trust God. A lot has happened since then. In fact, it's hundreds of years later. We skipped a couple stories. It's a couple hundred years later since Abraham and his family. So what happened was Abraham and his family, they were growing, they were doing great, all these awesome things, and then their people got pulled away off to a land called Egypt. Have you heard of Egypt? Do you know what's there? I'll give you a hint. Pyramids, that's right. Egypt is where the pyramids were. Well, the people of Israel, they were getting enough people. They're getting to grow really big, just like God had promised Abraham and his family. And then they needed a place to live. And they thought they would be getting that. But then the people of Egypt brought the Israelites there. Long story, we'll cover it maybe some other time. But they bring all of God's people to Egypt, and then they made them slaves. That means they made them work without giving them any money, and they kept them there. That doesn't sound fun. And they stayed that way for 400 years. Then a guy named Moses came on the scene. And God protected Moses in an incredible way until he was older. He got to live as a prince in Egypt, even though he was born as one of God's people, the people of Israel, from Abraham's family that was supposed to be growing. And God protected him, and he ran off into the desert when he became an adult, even though he was a prince in Egypt. He ran off, and he got to know God in the desert. His name was Moses. And then Moses comes back because he meets God and encounters him, and he wants to show all of Israel, all of God's people, that God still cares about them. So he goes and he wants to bring them out of slavery. So he does that. God does some crazy stuff to protect them. Ask your parents about it. And then they're wandering out into the wilderness, back into the desert, and they need God to take care of them. But the thing is, they haven't talked to God in a long time. They haven't been living with him because they've been stuck in Egypt. And so they need to know how to live the best way that God wants them to. And the best way to do that is to have a couple rules so we know what is good and what's not good. So we're going to jump into this and cover some cool stuff. So after 400 years in Egypt, the Israelites were finally free. Can you imagine how that would feel? Now, have you guys ever been stuck inside because the weather's been bad outside for a long time? And then it's finally nice enough out that you can go outside. Well, imagine being stuck for 400 years. That's a long time. You imagine how good that would be? It wasn't easy. Immediately they ran into trouble, and immediately God showed up to help. The Red Sea was in the way of their escape, so God pushed the water aside, and they walked right through. See that? God made the ocean, split it apart, so they could walk right through the middle. They had no food to eat, so God sent birds for meat and weird flaky stuff called manna for bread. They had no water to drink, so God told Moses to hit a rock with a walking stick, and boom, a fountain of water came right out of the rock. Even though God was with them, giving them everything they needed, the children of Israel still complained. It's too hot. We're thirsty. We're tired of eating this weird flaky stuff. Have you guys ever complained? I know you have. Those of you guys that said no, I know some of you guys have complained. I've complained too. We always find a way to complain, right? Even when things are amazing. Israel, this weird flaky stuff that was happening, it was coming out of nowhere. It was like dew on the ground in the morning was out there for them to pick up and eat. And even when they had no food, God was making food appear out of nowhere, and they still complained. Now, maybe you guys have been on a road trip. Have you been on a road trip? Where did you drive? Cool. Well, have you ever on a road trip said, "Are we there yet?" Yeah, you've said that? Well, you're probably going someplace pretty awesome. Have you guys had fun on your road trips? But even on the journey to go somewhere awesome, are we there yet? We can complain and be sad. Israel was the same way. Where was this new land? Why did they have to be in the desert? How long would they keep walking? God wanted more than just to get them to the land he promised. He wanted to make them a nation whose king was God himself. The Israelites needed more than just directions for where to go. They needed directions for how to live. They needed to understand how to be a nation ruled by God. You see, even though they were the children of Israel, they still sinned. Sometimes they were mean. Sometimes they would put themselves first. Remember, people who sin can't be close to God. So how could sinful people live with God as their king? It's going to be hard. It's going to take lots of work. It was going to take rules, lots and lots of rules. So God led Moses up a mountain called Mount Sinai so they could talk about these rules. He started out by giving Moses 10 really important ones. So important that he carved them into big stone tablets. They were so important that today they have their own name, the 10 Commandments. Here's what they are. You must not have any other gods except me. This is a big one. Egypt had lots and lots of pretend gods. Some of the Israelites had started worshiping those gods. Instead of the true God, God made it clear that he was the only God that they should bow down to. Don't make any idols. In the ancient world, an idol was usually a small statue that stood for a god. People would pray to it and give it offerings and statues. None of that, God said. Be careful how you use my name. God's name deserves respect. The Israelites were about to use God's name seriously, and only when they were talking about him. This is a cool one. We'll cover all these at the end one more time, but this one, that God's name needs respect, is a cool way. In how we say God's name, we need to be careful. But have you guys ever watched any kind of sports? Hockey or basketball or something? Cool. Well, or football. Yeah, cool. Well, have you noticed they all have the same color or same kind of shirt? So my favorite hockey team is the San Jose Sharks. But maybe yours is the Calgary Flames. They live right here. So every person, no matter what name's on the back, it says their name. So mine might say Toner. Theirs has their last name on the back, but everybody has the same front one. And taking God's name in vain, it says this, be careful how you use my name, is the way this story puts it for you guys. It means you are showing God everywhere you go. Just like the people in the Calgary Flames have that flame on the front all the time that they're playing, we have God's name when we say, I follow God, and then we go and we be mean. That shifts how people see God. So if we want people to know God is good, we have to show what being like God is like so they can see it. Just like the people on your favorite team always are seen to be one of the people on that team. Let's keep reading. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day. God wanted the Israelites to take one day each week and give that day to him as a reminder that everything they had was from God. Honor your father and mother. Respect your mom and dad. Listen to them. Take care of them when they're old and when they can't take care of themselves. This makes God happy. Don't murder anyone. There was a lot of murder in the ancient world, but God didn't want his murder in his nation. Do not be guilty of adultery. Adultery is when you take someone else's wife or husband and act like they're your wife or husband. It's sort of like stealing, and it breaks up families, which is very important to God. Families are very important to God. Do not steal. Speaking of stealing, don't take things that don't belong to you. Do not tell lies. Be honest. Don't try to get yourself out of trouble or get other people into trouble by saying things that aren't true. Do not covet. Covet means to want to take. If you covet someone's bike, it means you want to take their bike. God says be happy with what you have. Don't desire the things that other people have. 10 big rules carved into stone. But was that everything Israel needed to do to live with God as their king? Not even close. Moses was about to learn the 10 commandments weren't the end of God's rules for Israel. They were just the beginning. So, can you guys remember all 10 of those? No, that's okay. But we're going to say them all one more time, okay? So first, you must not have any other gods before me. You say no other gods? Okay. Number 2, don't make any idols. Say that, no idols. So no other gods, no idols. Be careful with my name. Be careful with God's name. Number 3, remember the Sabbath. Or for number 4, remember the Sabbath day. It's an important day where we stop everything else and just focus on God. Number 5, honor your father and mother. Number 6, don't murder anyone. That goes for you. Don't murder anyone. Number 7, do not be guilty of adultery. Number 8, do not steal. Number 9, do not tell lies. And 10, do not covet. So, a couple things, everyday truth. God guidance shows me where to go. God's guidelines show me how to live. If we want to know how to live the best way we're supposed to, we've got to listen to God. So here's our question. Why was it important for God's people to have rules? Why do you think it was important for God's people to have rules? Yeah. Have you guys ever been to a park? Yeah? I love parks. Even as a grown-up, I like going on the swings, and I like playing on the monkey bars, and all those kinds of things. Parks are fun. Have you guys ever crossed a road? Yeah? With your parents. What do you have to do a lot of times? You have to hold their hand, and if you're big enough to go on your own, what do? You look both ways, right? You got to be careful. Now, if we had a park right next to a busy road, what would you do to protect the kids who are playing at that park? Especially the littler ones who don't know how to be safe around busy roads. You put a fence. That's right. So God's rules, instead of people just going off everywhere and maybe getting hit by a car, they didn't have cars back then. God made these rules so it would help keep the people living a safe life the way that He wanted them to. So these rules are to help keep us safe. Back to talking about sports. If you play soccer and I say, hey, I'm going to play soccer with you and I'm going to score a goal, but I go running away from you, I can't score a goal. We can't do what we're supposed to if there aren't some rules in place. So that's why God gave rules. Next question. If directions tell you where to go, what do rules tell you? Well, I think we kind of just answered that. If directions tell you where to go, rules tell you how to act. Those are some good questions. Let's do our prayer for the end here. Can you guys say this after me? Dear God, thank you for giving us rules for how to live in a way that honors you. Amen. Awesome, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have another experiment next week and another Bible story after that. So make sure to follow and go do the crafts that are down in the description below, and we'll see you soon.